Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Creators Anonymous, the podcast where we speak to creators, people in the production industry, and media personnel, just of all kind and throughout the industry, and we get their backstory. And remember, our main goal is to show you that there isn't one set way to get into the business where you're passionate, the career choice where you can produce or create your visions, and do something that you love. Today, we are joined by a special guest, Evan Kidd. How are you doing today, man?
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
No, of course, man. Guys, Evan actually reached out to me and he let me know that he was interested in being on the podcast. I was super happy to hear that. That means we are gaining some traction, guys. So, we're just going to have, more and more people who want to tell their story and who want to speak about the projects that they're working on. Um, So, Evan, I know that you reached out to me. How did you see the podcast? How did you learn about it?
Yeah, so there's a website, Matchmaker FM, and I was looking on that for different podcasts and people who just wanted to have, creative conversations. I actually host my own podcast as well. So, I'm just always down to chat with people who love the format and are passionate about it. And so I definitely saw that in your work and wanted to reach out. So.
Awesome, I appreciate that. So, guys, I will be linking Evan's podcast in the description. Go ahead, check it out, show
Thank you.
some love. There's enough love to go around for everyone in this industry. Uh,
Definitely.
Evan, I want to get a little bit about your backstory. I did go ahead and I did some research, but I love to hear it from you specifically. What got you into this industry in general? Was it something that just kind of clicked and you go, oh, this is what I love? Or did it build up over time and then you found out your appreciation towards it?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was twofold. So I've always been that kid growing up watching movies, glued to the TV. Like, I always had my parents being like, don't sit so close to the TV. So, growing up, I was always watching movies, TV shows, documentaries, everything. And I always loved the idea when I was younger of like taking that family video camera. It was, VHS back in the day. I'm a 90s kid. And, just running around, wasting tape as, the parents would always joke around with. But it wasn't a waste because they kind of quickly saw that I was experimenting, I was playing, I was learning, and they were super encouraging after that. And so, I was very lucky to be able to kind of play around with that camera growing up. And that really inspired me to, rope all the neighborhood friends into my little schemes and films. I'd be like, hey, can you come over to my house for 4 hours? And, I was like 12 and I'm like, I'll give you like some time on the N64 and then we can play a game, but will you help me play this movie idea out first? And so we just like film all these skits and stuff, and that just continued through high school and college. And when I got to college, I majored in film, did filmmaking, and then really just learned that you can do this anywhere. So I'm based in North Carolina, Raleigh area, and for me, like I love New York, love LA, love everything about the film world, but at the same time, like I don't really have a big desire to go make $1 million movies. Like I love small, passionate stories that you don't always see every day. And I love writing as well. So for me, like getting the tools and understanding to be able to make films now allows me to write my stories, shoot my stories, edit, distribute, and just tell them and put them out there. And I do the same thing with my podcast where I talk to people and just try to just help everyone make sure they understand that they can do it too, because I didn't always feel that way. So
I That's awesome. I really love to hear when the passion starts out really young. Even when someone doesn't understand it at the time, but it
yeah.
builds into something. Specifically for myself, I didn't find out exactly what I loved until I was like in my 20s.
Yeah.
I knew what I liked to do, but I specifically went into computer science in college, and I was like, man, I can't do this. Like, I don't like this at all. The only thing
Yeah.
that like really pushed me was, oh, when I graduate, I'm gonna make decent money. And I was like, but is that important for me? Or do I
Yeah.
want to do something I love? I left that. I switched my major to film and never looked back. I couldn't be happier. And for you, it started out really young. You said that you did little video projects,
Yeah.
and that's how it starts. That's how you start the fire of that passion. And I can completely agree with you where you're talking about that you like shorter or smaller budget films
Yeah.
to work with. It also helps because you don't have so many people's hands in the project, changing things. When you work on big productions, there's always someone that has a recommendation, and it never really comes out to your full vision.
Yeah.
And that's kind of disappointing as a creator, when you can't bring what you have in your mind fully into the world. But you did mention that you went to college. Which university did you attend?
Yeah, so I was in Greenville, North Carolina at East Carolina University, and they had a cinematic arts media production program. And so at the time, it was actually not in what is now the art department. It was, I think, in like the communications department. So it was a lot more like journalism based. And I was like, well, I know I don't want to be like a news reporter. That's not really my thing. Like, I definitely wanted more of the creative side. And so when they moved it over to the art department, I was like, oh, cool. Okay, I definitely see what they're trying to do now. And I think that like really influenced me a lot because, I love the like blockbuster stuff. I love Star Wars. I love all that stuff. I can't, wait for Mandalorian to return and all that type of stuff. But, at the same time, like I love weird art films. Like I love like experimental stuff where there's hardly any dialogue, documentaries as well. So like my problem sometimes is I like too many things. So sometimes I have to like narrow things down into really what I want to focus on, not just as a consumer to watch, but as a creator to create. And I think, the micro budget stuff, that's what college taught me really well, is that, you can be a one person band. You can just like take the camera, take the mic and just kind of run and gun and do it. It's harder that way. Like it's not easy.
Yeah.
And you know that. And like, it's like everyone who's ever picked up a camera and has done it for more than a few times, you quickly realize why in a perfect world, you can have a bunch of people to help you, but sometimes that's not reality. And so you have to be comfortable saying, okay, well, if I don't have, an uncle who's a Hollywood producer, then all of a sudden it all comes to me that I need to decide, do I want to do this, the harder way, which is, I hold the mic. Sometimes it's just me as the crew, and I've done it that way. And it's harder, but it can be done. Or do I just say, well, I gotta go be a production assistant for many, many years. And I did that for a little bit. There was a spell of time where I was a production assistant and I worked on some like TV shows and reality shows and stuff like that. And man, like, I mean, no offense, that was just not for me. Like I have mad respect for people who do that. But just the environment, it was not creative. The hours were just ridiculously long. It just wasn't fair to the workers. Like I think it just wasn't conducive to good creativity. And so like that's where I was like, okay, when I do this on my own films, I want to treat people well. I want to try to do it smarter and just get people who are just passionate about what they're doing and not overthink things. It's not about ego. It's not about money. It's just about like, let's create something we're proud of. And that's cool. So
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's very commendable, you're going into it with the mentality of like, I want to kind of switch things up and not really put people through that phase of just like mindless production assistant stuff, lunch, coffee, hold this, do that, call these people. And I feel like there's still so much in the industry, or so many people in the industry that believe you gotta put in your time of like grunt work to finally reach a point where like you're able to be heard. I don't agree with that. Some people do. And, if it works for them, it works for them. If they feel like they gained that experience through that grunt work, then more power to them. I don't think my mind works that way. I have a problem with authority. And I just don't like being bossed around like that. But, I guess sometimes you gotta do it, but I really loved to hear that your university actually separated the film into like the art department. It's still kind of shocking to me how some universities only have the communications degree. They haven't made that switch yet to going into something more artistic with film. It's all about broadcasting, and it's all about like news work and journalism. And it's crazy because I feel like we're moving towards kind of like a film society, or like organizations that really should strive to help make that switch for larger universities, because it's surprising how many still just don't do it.
They get really caught up in that sometimes. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But I do feel like a lot of people go into film for maybe the creative side. Maybe it was like me, they grew up watching movies and they were like, I want to do that too. And and I think it's hard, like this is kind of a tangent, but like at the same time I feel like one of the things I love about doing filmmaking, micro budget style out here in North Carolina, there's, not a lot of resource out here. There's some people who do it for sure, but like, it's definitely like the harder way to do it. But at the same time, I feel so much more empowered by that because the stories you get to tell are uniquely yours. You get to meet people and you get to work with people who you normally wouldn't work with. Like, and there's not that mentality like you talked about where people are like, well, you have to do the grunt work, you have to get coffee, you have to do things that, for years that just like don't align with what you want to do, don't align with your creativity. And to be honest, like I just don't want to be a cog in this big machine. And like, I have a lot of critiques with the way that machine runs sometimes. And like, my biggest thing is I just want people to be able to make stories of all kinds. And sometimes, Hollywood puts out the same couple things time and time again. And I think there's a lot of room for, new ideas and stories that just don't get told. And so, I think it's harder to do it yourself because like, a lot of times you don't get that glamour. And I think that's the other thing too, is like a lot of times in film, you have to remember why you're doing it, right? So it's like we talked about at the jump, it's running around with your friends with the camera, doing this, doing that. Like you might not be able to pay your bills with that. Like I do other work too to pay bills, but like at the same time, if that's the thing that creatively inspires you, then we got to sometimes separate the art from the commerce. And that's a hard conversation and it's not always easy. And, I think a lot of times you just have to say like, which one do I want? Do I want, the idea of maybe making a ton of money and working in this big system, but the odds of that are so slim? Or do I want the creative fulfillment now to grow as an artist? And I think that's the thing we lose a lot of times because it's, a lot of times filmmaking is this, very commercialized art form, but it is an art form. So I think a lot of times people forget that. So
yeah, no, it's come to the point where, it is very commercialized and it's become a machine,
yeah,
cranking out film after film, cranking out video after video with an outline. It's the creativity has dried up a bit, and I love to see people who just haven't let it get to them yet, that are putting in or putting out the weird movies or the niche movies or the very specific documentaries that cover something that you've never heard about,
right.
And I love that because Hollywood's gonna keep cranking them out and they're gonna keep cranking out remakes, and we're on like
Right.
the fourth round of remakes at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there is like a creative drop left, and that's why even
Yeah.
some directors in Hollywood, I love to see the ones that step out of that boundary and
Yeah.
like they put out their own work. But you mentioned how here in North Carolina, how is the industry over there? Is there an industry, or do you sometimes feel like you're kind of paving something that others can walk on later?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Like there's definitely people out here making stuff like, where, there are rural areas, but there's also, cities, Charlotte, Raleigh, things like that. And, there's people who are making work. There's a, studio in Wilmington, North Carolina on the coast. They shot like Iron Man 3 there back in, a couple years ago. So like, there are resources here. It's just not always super connected. Like I feel like sometimes all of us, not just in North Carolina, but just creatives who, are on the smaller scale, doing indie stuff, like we all kind of feel like islands sometimes, that we're just sort of segmented out here. And sometimes it's important to remember to connect with your peers, because then you're like, oh wow, we don't have to do this completely alone. So while I do take a lot of appreciation to the fact that I can do something alone, because a lot of times it's either you do it alone or it doesn't get done, on the same side of that coin, I'm appreciative that like, there are a few people I know that I can call and have networked with over the years that I'm like, I can see if they're available to help, or I can go help them, things like that. And so I think it's like, it's harder to build a community when there is not an infrastructure. So you do sometimes, like you said, have to pave the way. And, it's not just me, there's a lot of other people who are paving the way as well. But, I think it's exciting because like, you think about, okay, well, if we're all doing this now, what's it going to look like 10 years down the road? And so it gives me a lot of hope. So
Yeah, no, hey, and more power to you, man. I hope nothing but the best, and I hope you get that road nice and paved, bumpless,
yes,
flawless. But
yes.
it's like the same thing. Like, so I'm in Miami, Florida, right?
Yeah,
And here there's not really an industry like for film. Like there's not like a
right,
large film booming industry. There's a lot of commercial work and there's a
right,
lot of influencer work. So you got a lot of like YouTubers and TikTokers and
right.
stuff like that. Obviously for status reasons.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
the film industry down here isn't really existent. It's not very prominent. And there are some people putting out, good work, but it's not something that's too strong. Something that a previous guest had told me though, like really resonated with me. And it's how you're saying that, you kind of create something, you're building this network and you got to lay down that groundwork.
Yeah.
It's cool to think that those small directors and producers and writers over here are kind of doing that. And she was letting me know that when you go to LA, if you want to film in a restaurant, any restaurant, some of them have contracts, some of them say no filming, and some of them say, okay, here's the agreement. Over here you don't really get that. You kind of walk in, you're like, hey, can I, you
Yeah.
guys mind if I use this spot to just record something or film something real quick? And they're like, yeah, we're a little busy right now. How about at this time? And then you're like,
Yeah.
cool. And you just kind of work it out like that.
Yeah. It's
And
it's really organic. Yeah.
it really is. It is really organic. And I I like because I kind of wanted to move out of Miami for a while because of the industry not being like not having any infrastructure here. But when I look at it that way, I'm kind of proud to be from a smaller, industry and seeing if I can push the boundaries a little with it. Is there any, like being in North Carolina and being a filmmaker, have you found any of those boundaries yet? Like, have you found something that's specifically difficult to do in North Carolina where it would be easier, let's say in LA or something?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, just a lot of times just finding people, finding cast and crew and things like that. Like there's people here for sure, but they may not be quite as many. So like if the couple people who you want to work with, if they're, busy or whatever that day, you kind of have to work around a lot of those schedules where if it's a bigger place like, LA or New York or whatever, like you could probably have a larger pool to pull from, so you would not have to do that as much. But there's those logistical things for sure, but at the same time, like you talked about like kind of being proud of what you're able to achieve in Miami with things being organic. Like I feel so much of the same way here in Raleigh. And like my latest movie, it's called Panda Bear, and we shot it here in Raleigh, as well as a couple other places around North Carolina and Durham as well. And it stars my friend Damian Elliott Bynum, who goes by Camus Leonardo, and he's a rapper. And so basically we collaborated on this, and we were like, look, like both of us are local artists. He does music, I do film. And we were talking about just like not seeing things come out of North Carolina as often. There's definitely stuff here, like J. Cole's from here and stuff like that. There's a lot of people who have gone big and do tie back here, but at the same time, like on that local level, we really wanted to make something unique. And so we talked about collaborating. And so he plays the lead in Panda Bear, and he is like a fictional version of himself in the movie, like and he has this like manifested panda bear in a mascot costume that follows him around. So it's definitely like attention grabbing, and it's like a comedy drama, and there's like nothing like that we've seen in this area. Like there's been movies here for sure, but at the same time we were like, let's make something surreal, kind of wild, but also that has like a heartbeat and really is trying to say something. And it has a dope soundtrack. Like he made music for it too. And so like there's so many things that connect to this area that put down roots that, to be honest, I don't think we could have made that movie in LA. So like that's the thing that I'm really proud of. So
Yeah, no, and that's a beautiful segue into Panda Bear. I was gonna bring it up, and it's your newest film, if I'm not incorrect,
yeah,
right? It's your newest film. It looks amazing. I love some
thank you.
of the outdoor shots. It
Yeah,
really gives that feeling of just like open space, being
right.
in the middle of a forest. For a rapper, your friend is a good actor. So
Yeah, he's fantastic. This is his first film, and like he crushed it. And I'm like, dude, we gotta get you in more films. Like, yeah.
he really put himself into the role. And where did you find, the inspiration for the plot in general? Like, where
Yeah.
did you go? Hey, we're gonna make a giant panda, and this is gonna be part of his, mind. Where
Yeah.
where did that come from?
So we had this initial conversation at this coffee shop, and originally it was going to be a music video, and he had this different song that actually I don't think we ended up putting in the movie, and it was about a bunch of different things, and then we talked about turning things in expectations on their head in the music video, and the Panda Bear came into play there. And so we kept saying, what if this Panda Bear just kept like popping up and popping up and popping up? And there wasn't really a huge rhyme or reason. It was just like, when you make a music video, sometimes you want that eye-catching thing to pull people in to watch. And eventually we just got to talking about our lives and things we've both been through and mental health. And he was talking about grief, and he'd actually recently lost his mother. And so that was something he was dealing with, and he was talking to me about it. And so we really got on that conversation about grief. And so in the movie, he plays a fictionalized version of himself who's going through a grieving process, slightly different for sure than what he went through. But, we wanted to show that grief is obviously universal, and we wanted to touch on that and show that, it is really sad and it affects your mental health. But at the same time, like, it pulls you from your job, it pulls you from your friends, it pulls you kind of out of your world in this weird way. But then like there were also like moments of comedy and moments of levity in there too. And like the panda is sort of just reminding him throughout the whole thing, like, your life is still going on. And, it's definitely kind of a surreal experience. Like there's music, there's trippy moments, there's comedy. He meets like this whole cast of characters because he kind of goes on this little road trip in the movie and kind of to find himself, so to speak. And so, I don't spoil it, but it definitely takes some surprising twists and turns. And I think it's got a good amount of comedy to balance out the drama and vice versa. So,
yeah, no, it's such an interesting film. Where can someone watch it?
Yeah, so right now it's on Amazon, so you can buy or rent it there. And then actually, if you want to watch it for free on streaming, you can stream it on Tubi TV.
Awesome, guys, check it out. I'm gonna leave the name of the film below and a link to Evan's website with the trailer and everything. Get that some foot traffic.
I appreciate that.
No, of course, always gotta support. It's great to see someone putting out films that have that type of meaning. I feel like there is a large influx of media that's coming out, associated with mental health, especially because of the pandemic and how detrimental it's been to so many people's mental health through this whole time, and I feel like it's something that we do have to address and kind of show in media in a positive, negative, whatever type of light that it really is, what's going on, and people just dealing with it, someone you can relate to. It really creates that inclusion, and I love the Panda Bear costume though. Like, just say, I don't know where you guys got. I don't know where you guys got it, but like, it's so good because it's like, okay, so this has got to be a guy in a panda outfit, right? But it's in his head, and so he's like, it's like this representation of like, this mix and like an anamorphic type panda bear, like in his head. And it's just so fun to kind of watch and try to relate to. But
I love hearing you say that. That's dope. That was the goal. It was very ragtag. Like the costume, it came in 2 pieces, and we just ordered it off Amazon. I literally was like, "What's the cheapest thing we can order?" Because our budget for this was like $400 and some pizza. Like, I mean, it was nothing. And like, and actually, what ended up helping was the Amazon refunded us because like one of the costumes was like it got lost in the mail, and then it just arrived anyway, and they were like, "You can keep it." And I was like, "Great, we'll put that $40 towards pizza." We just were ragtagging the whole thing, like, and that's what was so fun about it. Is like I love that lo-fi aesthetic kind of like came through, and you said you appreciated that because like the panda was supposed to be like a manifestation of his kind of psyche, like you talked about earlier, and like it wasn't pretty. Like the costume was kind of falling apart. There was actually one part that was like broken when it arrived, so we just threw duct tape on it and left it there throughout the whole thing. So like the pandas literally held together by like duct tape.
And I think it adds way more character to the role and to like his, because like you said, his mental health is like kind of falling apart. The panda's falling apart. It's a perfect representation of how he's feeling, what he's thinking, and it, like the panda is essentially helping him with some stuff. Like he's passing him stuff, and it's like, okay, does this mean that, like, his mental health is trying to help him, like his brain is trying to help him in some way, it just can't get through. And so yeah, I just love it. The aesthetic is very pleasing and everything.
Thank you.
And that movie, like, it really, I love kind of like the weird trippy aspect. I'm a big fan of, like, weird movies in general. I think, I know there's a Hollywood movie, but
Yeah.
Donnie Darko was
Yeah.
kind of my introduction into kind of like weird mental trippy movies. And from then on, it just stuck. I love the dark aesthetic from Donnie Darko, and I loved, like, the whole thing, the rabbits in his head and all that. And his ride was a little more evil. It was like telling him to do certain things, but so I'm glad the panda
Right.
didn't take that route.
Right. Panda was a little more chill. He was, yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely a little more chill. Um, but no, I'm glad to hear that, two local artists, joined, and with their combined efforts were able to produce a end product that, was as good as yours, man.
Thank you, man.
And that's what I'm always pushing. It's like, it you can make gold out of nothing. You can just really push and strive, and as long as you have a good idea, your heart's in it, your passion's in it, it can create a great end product. It can, you join together with friends, with loved ones, with whoever shares that passion, and you guys can, in a combined effort, produce something that's very enjoyable for, people to watch. And I feel like you guys really did that, and in North Carolina, you said that
Yeah.
there's not a lot of people. You found the people that it was worth making with.
Yes. And that was what was so major, is like Damien and I, we talked about this from the start. We were just saying, like, we really wanted to show people North Carolina, and, North Carolina has so many layers. Like, there's the expectation of what you think it is, then there's the reality of what it actually is. And, that's what we really wanted to show: the city, the country, just all the different parts of the woods, like everything kind of came together, I felt like, in the texture and the landscape of this movie. And so, location is almost as much of a character for us in this as anything else, as much as the panda is anything. And, like you talked about too, what's so weird with this movie is, the mental health aspect is obviously there. And we literally shot this, I kid you not, like 2 months before COVID started. So we shot this, like, not knowing obviously anything that was to come. And then here we have this movie on our hands that's like so tied into mental health. And, it was obviously relevant before, but I feel like it's almost become more relevant. And, like, that's why, it's really important for me to share the movie with people. I'm going to promote any movie I make, but I'm trying to give this one a little extra love, because, like, I feel really passionate about the message. I relate to it. It's been a struggle for everyone going through the last couple years and everything with, COVID and everything else. And, like, we just want to make it accessible to people, and, show people that they're not alone. Like, that's literally the name of the song in the movie that Damien wrote. It's called "You're Not Alone," and he's the one he performs in the movie. And the whole movie is him just, like, trying to write that one song throughout everything else. That's like the subplot. And so it meant a lot, man, to get it out there. And what was tricky too is, like, all the film festivals were, shut down in 2020. So, obviously we put this movie out in 2020, and, like, part of me was like, should I sit on it? Should I wait? Blah, blah, blah. And obviously, we did like the virtual film festivals, and that was super dope. And we met some people, through that. And the internet has been like the biggest place to get this movie out to people. Like, originally we were going to have like a dope premiere and, like, have him perform and make like a little concert out of it. And obviously all that had to get scrapped. And I hope we can maybe circle around to it one day in the future. But, in the meantime, we did the best we could with what we had. And that's like the whole symbolic nature of the movie from the jump, was just like rolling with the punches, just figuring it out, and just staying persistent, and remembering that core message. So.
Yeah, man, the internet can make anything happen, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that organic independent marketing is so strong nowadays. It's so nuts. But yeah, no, I know that it must have been difficult with, the film festivals being shut down and everything going virtual. It's so serendipitous though that you created this movie right on, like, the verge of the pandemic, and now it kind of resonates more than ever.
Right.
It really does. Um, but Evan, besides the budgeting, what did you find was like the most difficult aspect of shooting the film?
Yeah. In terms of production, weirdly enough, production was almost, I don't want to say it was a breeze. Like, there were things that were definitely,
It was smooth.
challenging. Like, yeah, it was very smooth though, all things considered. Like, we had some longer days and, we drove kind of far for a few scenes and, the stuff in the woods, especially like, you got the camera with, a finite amount of batteries. And it's not like when you're in the middle of nowhere, you can just plug a battery in. Once it goes, it goes. So, there was that little balance of, okay, do I want another take? Or do I want to make sure we get everything that we need to get today? Because you kind of have to make those calculations. And then the other calculation that was really interesting. So I do a lot of corporate work and music videos and stuff. So I do a lot of like, cinematography during that. So I definitely like feel good as a cinematographer, but this was like really the first time I've done a feature that I've wrote and directed and also shot as the cinematographer. And so that was a big step out of the comfort zone for me because those are just a lot of things to be doing at once. And when you're worrying about the ISO and the frame rate and things like that and keeping lighting good, that's less time you can talk to the actors. And then you're also trying to keep the schedule going because you're also the producer. And so you kind of just have to eventually get to this like flow state where everything is sort of going at the same time, and it's challenging, but it can be done. And so again, that was the biggest thing because there were cinematographers I wanted to work with, but they were not all available at the same time. And so at the time, it was either shoot this at the end of 2019 or wait until like mid 2020. And obviously I'm glad we did because I don't think we would have ever made the movie if I had waited. So
Yeah, no, and you're so right. Like, there's so many things to take into consideration, composition, ISO, frame rate, just everything. And it does give you less time to talk to the talent and the actors and stuff. And it's funny because you're saying that you were like out in the middle of nowhere, you can't just plug something in.
yeah.
So what time were you guys starting production? Because I know you have a lot of ambient lighting you have to work with. Like you said, you can't
Yeah.
just plug in lights and stuff.
Yeah.
So were you
It
starting
would
production at like the
depend.
crack of dawn?
A lot of times we were like, yeah, what we would do is I was also like driving everyone. So, there was the scenes in the woods in the middle of the film where he meets like this trio and they're truly just out in the middle of nowhere. And we had to drive to this farm to get farm shots. And then next to the farm, there was this woods. So we had to kind of hike out in the woods and do that part. So we did both of those on the same day. And we tried to get everything done before the sun went down, which was also kind of a challenge because you're racing the sun at a certain point. Once the sun goes down, you can't get anything else. And all those scenes were day scenes during the day. And so, we definitely had to like get up at like 5 and be like, all right, everyone meet me here, get in my car. I'll drive us 3 hours to the location. Then we get out, meet the people there, get things moving, unload the gear, get the actors, and that's the thing when you're in the kind of rural area, not everyone's always been there before. So you have to kind of coordinate where's everyone parking, where, all these little logistics that, have to come together in tandem to make the movie. But then once everyone finally gets there, you get in that flow state, things start moving and grooving, and then you're off to the races. And I mean, it really worked out almost perfectly that day because the very last shot that I filmed was like right as the sun was just like about to go into night. And I was like, we got it. We're good. All right, let's go home. And that's the best feeling.
No, yeah, of course, like it's kind of disheartening when like you still have like let's say one shot left, but the
Yeah.
sun's down, and then now you have to wait that whole night to just
Yep.
go ahead, go back and do it again for one shot. Yeah, no, it's a little disheartening, but I'm so glad you got it done,
Yeah.
and you guys, beat the sun in the race
Yeah.
against time, man. But you were mentioning, Evan, that like you've done like corporate work and you've done
Yeah.
videography for other stuff. Uh, do you find yourself enjoying those things, or is it kind of like something that like, oh, it pays the bills?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously there's some projects you're just gonna enjoy more than others. And sometimes clients will be super awesome and they'll be like, look, just let you do what you want to do. And other times you just gotta kind of plug in and like that's cool too, because I learn a lot that way. And so, I really try to look at the corporate stuff and anything else I do. I used to shoot a ton of weddings and stuff and all that type of stuff. like, yes, it's not exactly what you want to be doing, but like all those skill sets that improve my reaction time, that improve my decision making time. How do I switch really quick the lens or a battery? Like, because when I used to shoot weddings, if a battery goes, you gotta be quick to put that next one back in to make sure you don't miss a shot. Because that's the most important day of someone's life, probably. So you want to make sure you get everything you can. And so like just those little things, like while it is not like screenwriting 101 or directing or whatever, like it is improving your skill set if you want to do the type of filmmaking I do, which is like a lot of different things. You're touching the camera, you're helping with audio. I do have people who come help me, no doubt. Like Panda Bear, I had crew members. We had like 3 or 4 people, but still it's not a ton of people. And so you still got to be able to collaborate, help each other out. So I think all those things really just like improved my skill sets. And like, again, going back to the cinematography, like, even though I knew it would be a challenge, I had to like remind myself, like, you've done this before. Like, come on, Evan. Like, and that's the thing, you got to give yourself a pep talk sometimes, because it's funny. It's like, no matter how many movies you make, I always get this way, that night before production, I'm like charging batteries, I'm checking everything. And I'm like, am I good? Do I have everything that I need to do here? And then I'm like, no, I've done this before. Like, so sometimes you just have to tell yourself that, and just be like, yeah, you've got everything you need. The skills are there. You got to plug in. So.
Nah, I completely agree. I feel like any type of camera work or videography work should be looked at. If you're not 100% enjoying it, because it's not everyone's passion to do corporate videos or weddings, look at it as practice, because at the end, anytime you have a camera in your hand, it's good practice. You're figuring something out. And I had a friend who he wanted to get into photography, and he's like, how do I start? What do I do? I'm like, man, grab your camera and go shoot stuff. Then look at the picture and go, I don't like that. How can I change it? And just keep shooting and keep shooting and keep taking pictures. And eventually he was like showing me pictures where he's like, look, so I lined this up with that. And there was like rule of thirds and like great composition. And like, I was like, exactly. That's hardest part of anything is just starting.
It really is. Like,
it's so, it's so detrimental to like the creative process. It's like, I don't know, like how many people I know that have these great ideas, and they have these great ideas for sketch comedy skits, for short films, for documentaries, for all types of stuff. And then they never do it. Like, they never started off, because the hardest part of doing anything is just starting. After that, it rolls. You work with it. This goes wrong. You work with it some more. But there's as someone called it, Filmmakers Purgatory, and it just stays there. And the idea
we end up
there
sometimes.
It's so sad, but it's so true. Like,
it's a challenge. Like, I've been there, man. Sometimes I'm there like on a Tuesday. Like, it's a place, like, it's not one place you just get out of and you never go back. Like, you can get out of there and you fall right back down, and then you get out of there and you fall right back down, and it continues. I think the key is, and again, I still need to work on this. Like, I am not perfect at this. It's just remembering that not everything has to be so precious. Like, obviously it's important to care about what you're doing. Like you said, if you're not enjoying it, life is too short. Find something else you enjoy. But if you are enjoying it and you're just like worried about like, how will it be perceived? Can I afford it? Blah, blah, blah. Like, just sit down and write something that, you're not going to judge. Cause I think a lot of times we are our own worst critic, and we'll sit there and be like, no one's going to care about this story. Why am I even wasting my time writing it? Like, if you even had the thought where it's popped up in your head, like, this is the way I test all my scripts. Like, I don't, some people have like a journal, they write things down the moment they get an idea. I don't really do that. If it pops up more than a few times, like in my inner monologue in my head, I'm like, okay, this one's coming back. I'm like, something's here. Yeah. Like, if I'm at the grocery store and I get this idea and I'm like, all right, that's cool. And then I like kind of carry about my day. And then a week later, like, I'm on a run and then it comes back. I'm like, okay, all right, this one's coming back. That's something I need to sit with and go for. And so like, that's all I do. And I try to just sit down and write it, not be too precious with it. Like, when I write, something that helps me is anytime I write something, I write it knowing that I'm going to go do all the work to produce and shoot and do everything else. So I try not to write too elaborate, because I don't want to make too much work for myself. I want to keep it realistic to actually be able to go out and shoot. But then at the same time, if there's something that like, is bigger budget that I can't make a film, like I'll just make an outline for a novel and I'll just like write it like a book. And like, again, like if you have a story to tell, it doesn't matter the medium, like it's just burning inside of you and it needs to come out. That could be a podcast. It could be a YouTube video. Like, find an animator and collab with them. Like, really just don't stifle yourself, I think is the biggest thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's sometimes hard to get out of, but just push your hardest out of it. And even if it's an idea that you don't think is 100% perfect, or that you're gonna be able to 100% do, outline it. See what you're working with. It's not something that you should just leave behind, because there's so much that people leave on the table that are pure gold. And it's like, imagine out of like, let's say 100 movies coming out a year, there's like 500 that never even get a second thought, that never even like get put into practice. And those all could be gold. Those are, a lot of people that I know, though, like they're like, oh, what if people don't enjoy it? What if people don't think it's funny? What if it doesn't get any views, or it doesn't make it anywhere in a film festival? And like, I find myself a lot more of the time, like especially now that like every day that goes by I'm getting older, and I find myself just like, who cares? Like, who cares if it like doesn't go anywhere? You made it, and then it could go somewhere. So isn't the possibility like worth taking the risk? And like, have you ever had a project that you were like kind of second guessing, and then and like, where did that go?
Yeah. So right now is actually a really interesting time to make this kind of comparison, because, we are still in the pandemic, but we're coming out of some things. So it's like, you can make things and you can try to like, put your ideas out there, but there also might be more challenges that were not, a thing in 2019. So you're, already judging your work creatively, but now you're judging things logistically. What can I do? What can't I do? And so for myself, I had these two projects that popped up while I was, I'm still out here promoting Panda Bear. I'm writing a new project. And then it was during this time where I was like, it was like last year, I couldn't shoot anything. I couldn't go do that much. And I was like, but I just have this dumb idea that I want to get out of my head. And it was like a parody of Saw. And it was like a GameCube, because I'm a big video gamer. And it was like a GameCube that was possessed. And it was like such a stupid idea. Like, I never do straight comedy like that. Like, I just do like kind of drama comedy stuff. But I was like, what if I just made a really dumb video? Like, I just want to be goofy. And I had to get that out of my head. And I made this like goofy 5-minute thing. I threw it on my YouTube channel, and like, it didn't get a ton of views, but it's called Let's Play a GameCube. And it was just this dude who like was trying to figure out why his GameCube was possessed and talking to him. And it was like so stupid, but like sometimes you got to get that little nugget out of your head. And like, I'm not expecting that to do anything. That's so different from my normal work. But once I did it, I felt so good. I was like, wow, this felt like how it did when I was a kid playing with that VHS camera. I was just goofing off, making something over a weekend. And I think like that's important, because like, as we get further established, like I've made several features, I've made documentaries, I've done things like that. And I'm so proud of, the growth I've had as an artist. But at the same time, I don't want to lose the spark to just explore something, even if you just open a door and it's just a closet in a single room and it's not like a big, mansion. You're like, wow, okay, I tried something. I did something. There's something I can learn from that and bring it into the next project. So like, it doesn't always have to be grand. You just got to try things. And like, again, what's really organic too is the other film thing I'm working on. It's a short documentary about a hearse festival, which is like, the things that take caskets to funeral.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's this? So we eventually had a Panda Bear premiere in October at a film festival in Beaufort, North Carolina, on the coast. And it was the first film festival we'd been to in person with the film. They had this like nice little outdoor area. So it was, it was really dope to like see them try to pull something together throughout the pandemic. And then after the festival, one of the people who worked at it was like at this brewery, and one of the people who worked at the brewery was telling us about the next event they're having, and it was this hearse festival. And so Damien, who's the lead in Panda Bear, and I were just like, oh, that's crazy. And then like it's so wild how organic that was, because then I was like trying to get more info about it. Damien came back with me a few weeks later, and then we filmed a documentary at that, just because we heard about it at the film festival for Panda Bear. And it's just like we had no clue that was going to happen. We just opened our, imagination to it, and we were just like, sure, we can come back in a few weeks when that's here. And it was a great time. And so now I'm editing that. And so like sometimes you just gotta like really let yourself be open to things. Like both of those projects, I wouldn't have planned those to happen. They just sort of did. So like while it is important to like, write and really, work that creative process out, sometimes you just got to be like in the community, in the world, and just see, what you can connect with too. So
Yeah, taking inspiration from your daily life,
yeah.
from your daily events and experiences is probably the best way to kind of relate to people. It's
Yeah.
because if you've ever been in a situation, it's more likely than not that like a million people have too.
Right.
You ever seen those memes where it's like, uh, let's say it's like, oh, me standing in the shower thinking about life for an hour, and you're like,
Yep.
man, I've done that. Like I've gone ahead and I've done that. I thought I was the only one that wastes time just standing there and thinking. But it's like how many other people have probably heard of this Hearst Festival, and then they're like, man, I wonder what's that's about. Like it
Right.
sounds weird. And they're like, oh snap, there's actually a documentary on it. And then boom, people are curious. And I think inspiration, can be found everywhere, just like anywhere,
Yeah.
especially if you're like, like kind of like outside the box thinker, like an outside the box thinker, you can find creative ideas anywhere. But that's so
Yeah.
cool. I'm super down to like, give that a watch when you're
Yeah. I'll
done with
send it to
that.
you when I finish it.
I
Yeah.
am so because now I'm curious. I want to know
Yeah.
what a Hearst festival is.
Yeah,
So,
we'd never heard of it. Like that was the thing. We were just like, "Oh, is this real? Oh, that's crazy cool." Like and like everyone there, like, people had like a, souped up one with monster truck wheels, and like one
oh
had a
yeah.
flamethrower that came out of it. I mean, it was insane. I was like, I didn't even know this existed prior to a few weeks ago. So like now I get to point a camera at it and like talk to people, and like they're showing off the stuff they're passionate about. And again, it's like we talked about at the beginning, whether it's filmmaking or like souping up your hearse, everyone's passionate about something, and there is a community out there for you. And again, I kind of like to float in and out of different worlds, and so it's fun to like, see what they're doing over there, and then like see some of that passion and bring it back to what I'm doing. And like sometimes I think the best advice I can give people for filmmaking and creativity is like just open yourself to other things. Don't just put on blinders and just like think of directing only. Like just paint, do other things, like see what else you can get influence from.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So I have always been a digital type of artist. Like,
Yeah.
and when I say digital, I mean like photography and videography. It's like the
Yeah.
two things. I love all forms of art. All forms of art don't love me. Okay. So
Yeah.
I can't draw well, I can't paint well, like I can't, sculpt or anything. And I think they're all cool.
Yeah.
But um I've always stuck to those two mediums because they work well with me. And I found myself being a little more passionate about them than other things. Like my
Right.
brain clicks when I'm working with cameras and like composition, like filming stuff. Recently though, I found the first physical medium I'm decent with, and it's like spray painting.
Oh,
So
cool. Okay.
yeah, and I think spray painting super dope. And I started doing the whole thing where like people make the planets and the galaxies and stuff.
Yeah.
So I've always liked those, and I figured out like, oh, I can do that. So I just have like I have a bunch of canvases with just like random spray painted planets that are just sitting around because like I won't stop making them, but I have no intention of selling them or giving them away. So whenever
Yeah.
someone comes over my house, they're like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, you can keep it. Like, take
Yeah.
it. I
That's for
have no
you.
room
Yeah.
and it's yours.
I love that, dude. Like, honestly, and that's such a good outlet to have. And, like, again, like, why are you doing it? Probably because you love it and you're enjoying that, like, discovery process, and you're like figuring things out. And, like, it's so magical, man. Like, I love to hear that. And, like, I kind of had a similar experience like when COVID first hit with like gardening, believe it or not, like I'd never gardened or planted anything. Like, I had a cactus, but like, that's easy. So like I started like growing hot peppers and making hot sauce. And like, that's just been such a thing I've enjoyed doing just over the last few years. And it's been a discovery process. And like, it's the same thing when people come over, they're like, oh, you do that? And I'm like, yeah, here's a bottle of hot sauce. Take it with you, and like, it's
Exactly.
fun.
It's so fun to see people's reaction towards like some effort and work that you've put
Yeah.
in. I'm a big fan of hot sauce. I
Okay,
tried the
dope.
gardening thing. I grew some jalapenos,
Nice.
and that's where it ended. I ate all the jalapenos, and then
It takes time. It
it
is.
takes,
Yeah.
but then I replanted, and halfway through those died. I don't know what was going
Yeah.
on in Miami, but it just wasn't working
Yeah.
out for them. And then I was discouraged. I'm like, man, I don't got the green thumb.
I didn't have it the first year and a half. Like I feel like I'm just getting there. Like, and here in North Carolina, it's basically you can't grow much right now because it's cold.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to wait till like April starts to really get in there. But then you get the summer and you can do whatever you need. But I would highly recommend fertilizer. There's like pH fertilizer that you can find, and like that was a game changer for me. But random,
I was doing straight soil, man. I was doing just straight dirt. That probably was the issue. Yeah.
No, but dude, that's awesome that you tried it out though. Like it's so like rewarding to grow something yourself, like, and just be like, wow, that came from nothing. Like
it really is. Those jalapenos were straight fire.
Yeah.
Those jalapenos were so good.
And they're better than the grocery store. Like
yes, man. I wanted to, for a while, I wanted to like make my own hot sauces and stuff because I go to this place called Pepper Palace.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it has like all these crazy hot sauces, and it has all from like not spicy, like very basic spicy, like serrano peppers and jalapenos, and then all the way to like Reaper hot sauces. But then they have hot sauces, they have dry rubs with all those peppers, barbecue sauces, pickled veggies, everything like that. And I'm like, man, yeah, no, it's great. But I found myself being like, man, I want to make one of these. And then like, I never did. And that's purgatory again. Like I just was like, hey, it'd be really cool to try. Never went for it. And it stayed in my creative purgatory.
Yeah. Dude, it was the same way with me. And then I realized I watched a YouTube video, like shout out to YouTube. There's always a video for something.
Always. YouTube University.
Exactly. And this guy was just like, all you need is like vinegar, a blender, and a stove, and then obviously the peppers. And then he just showed how to do it. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna try it. And the first time I did it, it was a huge disaster. But then the second time I did it, I was like, okay, I'm getting somewhere. And it just kind of progressed through that. So
well, there you go, man. See, the first time was a disaster. You didn't let it discourage you.
Right.
And then the second time, you made an actual product out of it.
Yeah.
Me, the first time was really good with my plant, and then the second time was a disaster, and I got discouraged, and I was like, I'm out.
Third time's the charm. Third time's the charm.
I really had to go for that third time.
Yep.
But I gave up way too early. That third time, I was about to create the perfect blend and the spiciest pepper in the world, but I never went for it. So now I just stayed there.
All right, you gotta give it another whirl.
But see, it's like, as creatives and as creative people and like, who basically have an art form, as their career choice. I like to say it all the time. Like we can't stop moving. We're constantly moving, looking to create something. If it's with our hands and growing plants and like making hot sauces, if it's spray painting for no reason, because I'm not like, I don't think I'm ever going to be a professional like spray painter and make money off of it. It's just really fun to create something. And like, you can't ever stop moving. And I think like growing stagnant is the death of like innovation and creativity. And, an object in motion stays in motion. You got to keep moving and putting out these projects, because if you don't, like for me, I don't know about you, I get stir crazy if I'm not making something.
Same. Like that's what was challenging, originally with COVID was I was like, playing a lot of video games and that was fun. But then after a little bit of time, I was like, all right, I got to like make something, do something. And so, when film was not a super convenient option, I did the gardening. And like now I'm getting, some films made in different ways, more creatively. But at the same time, having the resources to do it with not a lot of crew and stuff lends itself really well to this situation. So it's like, you never know what you're going to pull. You never know like what's going to help you win. That gardening, that spray painting, that one person film you made, your house, like, all that type of stuff. It really does total together. And, again, I think, like you said, there's a part of our brain that's always like turning. There's a hamster running on a wheel, making ideas. And I don't know that that hamster's ever going to like completely stop. Like, I do think it's important to take breaks. And like, I think I've kind of gotten into a much better balance because you can run the little hamster in your head too hard. And like, you got to give that guy a break. But at the same time, it's like, as long as you're making stuff, working through ideas in your mind, I think that's everything. That's what it means to be a creative person, an artist. And again, like, film is the medium I love, but also like writing is something I love, gardening. So I think like the key is just like not get lost on one thing forever. Like an artist is an artist. You might find different mediums. Maybe it's film one day, maybe it's painting, maybe it's novels, but if you're just creating stuff, like at the end of the day, you're a creative person and you're making yourself happy.
I agree. And burnout, like you said, is real. Like
yeah, it is. I've been
so
there.
harsh. It's so
It's challenging.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're so burnt out that like you felt like kind of just giving up?
Oh yeah, many times. I mean, it's hard. It's like it's not fun. Like it's like it turns something you love into something that's like giving you questions and challenges and whatever. And some might say that's part of the process, but I kind of think, okay, well, how can I make the processes work for my life and make good decisions, healthy decisions, things that allow me to be a person. Like I think that's the biggest thing I've taken away is like I don't have to just be an artist all the time. An artist is one part of my personality. There's many other parts of my personality too. And I think a lot of times like the kind of capitalistic forces of society are like, you have to be 100%, 110% in, or else you won't make it. And like, that's not sustainable. You can run that for a few months, few years, but after a while, it's going to catch up to you. You can't do sleepless nights forever. You can't, burn the midnight oil forever. You gotta be healthy with it. You got to create systems that are sustainable long-term if that's what you want to do. And then I think once you do put that work in to make those systems, everything else will fall into place. So it's like, I do my writing, I get a couple things done, I set aside some time, and then that's done. And then I get to go, have a personal life. I get to, see my family. I get to garden. I get to, do different things like goof off and play GameCube. Like, I'm a big retro gamer too. Like, it's all those things that come together that make the whole of my personality. And so like, I think that's the biggest thing is like, I'm always going to love this aspect, but it's not everything. And I think that actually allows me to be a better artist knowing that.
Yeah, no. And it's so, to burn out like that is so bad for your mental health. And I think that, taking breaks are highly important, and you stated in like capitalistic society, like, if you're not being productive 100% of the time, you're being just straight unproductive, which is not the case,
right.
There is a neutral ground. It's just like, and I don't think anything is unproductive about taking a break. I think in turn, like it's actually even more productive because you're going to keep being able to go at the pace that you're going once you're done with the break. When you burn out, it's like it's going to take twice as long to regain that same speed and momentum that you had before. So it's smart. It's smart to take breaks, and it's smart to give yourself those mental health days and those days with your family and the things that you love. Not to say you don't love creating film, but there's like a term I like to call, like, it's called brain mush. And when you're editing or you're filming for so long, you start making these mistakes that shouldn't be overseen. Because your brain just feels like mush. It's just done. So like I agree with you, taking those breaks is important. But Evan, where do you see, like, because I want to know about your plans for the future, about like, your career. You said that you like the lower budget films. If given the chance, would you like to create, a Hollywood budget film in the future, or do you want to just stick in this, which is, there's nothing wrong with it if it's what you want to do, but where do you see yourself going?
Yeah. So, it's funny. Like, I really just see myself as a creative human being. And so, as long as I'm being creative one way or another, I think I'll find some joy in that. Like, if Disney wants to hit me up and is like, hey, we got an episode of Mandalorian for you, like, I would love that. Like, I got a Baby Yoda thing over there. Like, I love that whole world. I'm a big Star Wars nerd, for sure. Like, hey, Disney, seriously, give me a call. But while I'm waiting on that call, like, I'm really just happy writing, funny stories, dramatic stories, really just stories that are true to life. Like, that's my biggest thing that I really want to do in my art, is like to really connect with people through storytelling, whether it's a film, a novel, a podcast, anything. Like, I love film, I think, the most, but at the same time, it doesn't mean I can't develop those other skills too. And so, I think as long as I'm staying true to that core value for myself, I'm really excited for whatever comes my way. Like, again, I didn't know I'd do that Hearst Festival documentary a couple months ago, but here we are. So, I kind of look forward to weird and organic things that pop up and introduce me to joy that way too. So
That's awesome. Yeah, Mandalorian's great.
yeah.
The way that they get their effects, I love that they forewent the traditional blue screen or green screen. They
Yeah.
have that giant, I forget the name, but it's this giant
I know what you're
screen.
talking about, that big thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in camera, the director can actually see everything, like as if like it's done, because I think they run it on Unreal Engine, which is
Yeah.
like yeah, but
Like video
that's
game stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So they get all the lighting and everything correct, and it doesn't have to be in post production or VFX, and it's a different level of
Yeah.
like production. But man, like that's awesome. Like I think that there's big things for you. I think that your commitment to your work is very admirable, and that your passion is super admirable as well. Uh, but like, let's say there's an upcoming, director. He wants to get into the film industry, but he doesn't know the first step. Like, where do you think that someone should, how someone should start, or what's the first step that you think that they should take?
Yeah. I can definitely speak to that because I have been there. It's like, there's a hard period of time, I think, where you first start, where it's like, how to make a movie, kind of technically what to do, but then you're like, well, what do I do? I can throw it on YouTube and get 50 views or what, like, and that's cool. Like, do that. But at the same time, like, kind of look maybe to films that you want to create, like a couple of your favorite movies, like maybe not your favorite movies that are just like, Star Wars, but like, do you have other movies, like dramas, comedies, like indie stuff that you enjoy, and then see how those directors made it. Like, maybe reach out to the producers of those movies, the directors, some of the people behind the scenes, and maybe just ask them like, hey, how did you put this together? I saw that you did this for $5,000 or $50,000. How did you make that happen? And maybe they'll write you back, because again, they're not Steven Spielberg. So like, kind of look to those places to start, because I think that's a healthier, like more natural progression than just trying to jump directly into like the biggest Hollywood blockbuster ever. And then just try to make those movies as shorts in your own backyard with your friends. Maybe if you don't have a camera, even use your iPhone. Like, the new cameras in the iPhones now are crazy cool. Like, so you can really do this stuff and just see if you like it. I think that's the thing too, is like, a lot of us think that we're going to love directing or whatever, and then you do it and you're like, oh, I actually like the cinematography more or whatever, and so then you kind of like shift up. And so I think it's important to try things, and I think it's important to just be open-minded. But yeah, I would say like, don't be discouraged by the Hollywood side, and I would almost say don't worry about that. You can get there later. I think look on the indie level, look on the local level, regional level, and see if there's stuff that's like made by people there that you would like to aspire to be. And I think those people will be more generous with their time and maybe help you out, maybe bring you in as like an intern, or just like let you, call them and be like, hey, how'd you do this? Talk on Instagram, whatever. Like, I think a lot of people are really generous with their time who are in those levels. So,
Well, that's great advice. I definitely agree with it. Like um, start at a smaller level. There's no rush to
right.
get to the top. It's gonna stay there, and you can always get there eventually. But learn your craft, focus your craft, create for the passion and love of it. You know, don't go creating because you see big money in it. It's like
Yep.
the passion projects are the ones that really hit home for some people, and those are the ones that become cult classics,
Yeah.
and they get remembered forever. But I've had cases, or heard of cases of like friends hit up someone in the industry and they're like, hey, can I shadow you like for free? Can I
Yeah.
just shadow you because I want to learn? And you know they're more than accommodating. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's go. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. But so what do you have in the works now? You have the Hearst documentary, the Hearst festival documentary.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you're working on?
Yeah, so I've got that, and I'm also eventually going to bring my podcast back. It's called Convincing Creatives, so we'll be coming back for season 4. So I'm really excited for that later this year. And then I'm also writing a new feature, and so it's kind of a horror drama. So I think it'll be kind of different from anything I've done before. I think it'll have some spooky elements, but also the core of it is really just a drama about some friends that are changing and like how they deal with that. So I think it'll be a fun
That's
time.
perfect, awesome. Guys, make sure to go ahead and check out Panda Bear. It's on Amazon. You can rent it or buy it there. You want to stream it for free, Tubi TV, and check out, I'm going to leave a description for Evan's page. You can go check out, any of the work that he's done commercially, learn a little bit more about him, watch the trailer for Panda Bear, support local artists, guys, film and otherwise. It's super important because this is where it all starts. It starts from ground level and up, and the sky is the limit. You can just keep going, but you got to start somewhere. And don't be afraid to take that step and start there. Start at the ground level, because everything you learn is just going to build you up. So support local artists, guys. Make sure when Evan drops it, make sure to check out that Hearst Festival documentary.
Yes.
And make sure to check out his podcast. I'm gonna leave those links in the description. Guaranteed you guys are gonna be in for a treat. They're gonna be enjoyable for you. And as always, I'm going to go ahead and keep making this. Leave us a like, share, subscribe, hit the little bell just to make sure that you are notified for anything going on in the Creators Anonymous world. I'm going to keep making it, if you like it or not. It's what I like to do, and it's what I love. I love connecting with new people all around the world in different states, and learning their stories. And Evan, let me just say, your story is interesting. I loved it, and I think our conversation was great, and I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me, and then thank you for doing what you're doing too, because like I think it goes without saying, but like giving people a platform, having creative conversations, like it helps me not feel alone. Like I feel so good after this conversation, and like I hope anyone listening can take some good stuff away as well. And we're all just out here trying to make stuff, and I think as long as we're true to ourselves, I know it's cliche, but at the same time, cliches are what they are for a reason. So I appreciate it, and thank you again for having me.
No, of course, man. It was my pleasure. And, like you said, it's just so fun to connect with someone on a creative level.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to know that there's people out there following their dreams and doing things that they love, because it hypes me up and it gets me fired up to create more stuff that I love and to bring out more projects on my end and keep making this podcast. And that's the reason I do it. I love giving a platform to creatives and people who are in the production, media industry, creative industry, all of those, So guys, if you guys want to be on the next podcast in the future, let me know. Go ahead and go to the About Me in my channel, and you will see the email that you can go ahead and contact me at. I'll also leave it in the description box below. But thank you for joining us on another episode of Creators Anonymous. Take care, guys.